Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. I hope you are doing swell. Reacting to UFC 318, a bittersweet card for obvious reasons. Bitter because we saw the departure of Dustin Poirier, because we saw a legacy come to an end. And whether you're a Dustin fan or not, there's no denying the integral part Dustin has played within the lightweight division for over a decade now. And whether you dislike or like Dustin Poirier, there's no denying that Dustin has been a part of some insane Hall of Fame worthy fights within the UFC. Not only fights, knockouts as well, where he has been on both sides of the insane knockout spectrum. Dustin Poirier will probably go down as one of the best fighters ever within the UFC to not win undisputed gold. And seeing him retire sucks ass. And it felt like heading into this pay-per-view event, heading into especially the main event, there was no perfect outcome because someone had to lose. And we almost saw both men get knocked out. We almost saw Dustin get knocked out. We almost saw Max get knocked out. Could you imagine Dustin Poirier got knocked out in his last fight within the UFC? That would have stung. But the silver lining was the event itself. This was by far one of the best events of the year. Because of the performances. For some reason, every single fighter on this card fought with the spirit of Dustin Poirier within them, fighting like it was potentially their last fight within the UFC. It started on the prelims and we had barn burner after barn burner. At the end, we had no barns left to burn. We were out of barns. And that is the only thing we ask for as fans. Is we want to see fighters take risks. Now, I'm not saying invite someone from your HR department to go watch a Coldplay concert whilst being married. We just want to see fighters impose their will on their opponents, dominate them with the idea of finishing them. Because whether you end up doing so, finishing your opponent or not, that kind of distinguishes a good and great fight from an average one. Because we saw on this card, we saw fights that went the distance that were still insane because both fighters wanted to finish their opponents. It wasn't for the lack of trying. It was just they were too durable. And then we saw finishes which was insane because, well, they finished their opponents. They had impetus, they had drive, hunger to impose their will. That's what makes a fight good, potentially great. And that's all we want as fans, is to see fighters try and finish their opponents. It doesn't necessarily have to be striking, it doesn't have to be wrestling, it doesn't have to be jiu-jitsu. It could be anything. Just try and be dominant. Don't play it safe. But at the same time, don't be Nikolai Veretennikov. And I'll get to that. But that's basically it for the intro. So gonna get into the video right now. Before I do so, just a friendly reminder, if you enjoyed the video, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button and the notification bell. I would really appreciate it. It would be awesome. You're awesome. Let's go. Now I am going to run through a lot of these, because if I had to dissect every single one of them, this video will drop on Thursday. Not because of how in-depth and cogent it will be, just because I am partially an idiot as well. So we started off the prelims, the early prelims rather, with Carly Judiz taking on Nicole Cagliari. And in the third round, Carly landed a knee to the liver of Nicole and knocked her out. Won via KO. And an impressive win for Carly Judiz, especially seeing that she inflicted a lot of damage on Nicole. Nicole was busted up, but props to Nicole. She also wanted to impose a will on Carly. Carly was just too good. She dictated range, used her jab, used the straight to great effect. And when that knee landed in the third round, something she was actually looking for the entire fight, she threw it a lot in the second round as well. When it landed, I thought it connected with Nicole's head, because Nicole fell in a way where she looked out cold, which goes to show just how devastating that knee was. A beautiful knee up the middle, a beautiful knockout, a beautiful way to start this event. And then in the second fight, Bruno Ferreira taking on Jackson McVeigh. Jackson making his debut inside the UFC. Bruno was heavily favored in this fight. Everyone expected Bruno to win. He did so first round. Jackson got overzealous, got up too high on Bruno Ferreira's back. Bruno just tossed him off as if he was a flyweight. And then basically ended up on full mount, went for an armbar, got it, and now it's Bruno Ferreira's second submission win back-to-back. He beat Arman Petrosyan via submission, beat Jackson McVeigh via submission. Was an impressive performance, was an impressive win for Bruno Ferreira, but we all expected it to happen. And then moving on to the heavyweight division, we had Ryan Spann. He took on Lucas Brzezinski. Fight starts, Spann takes Lucas down, Lucas scrambles, and then hands his neck on a silver platter for Ryan Spann to jump the gilly. And you could basically bet your granny Dustin Poirier was watching that fight and thought it is written in the stars. And I will get to that later. But Ryan Spann finishing Lucas Brzezinski with a guillotine. Ryan Spann is back to winning ways. His previous fight he lost against Costa, back to winning ways inside the heavyweight division. A good victory for Ryan Spann. Then we moved on to the fourth fight rather, inside the light heavyweight division with Jimmy Groot taking on Marcin Prachnio. An impressive victory for Jimmy Groot. Submission win once again. He looked really good. Jimmy Groot looked really good. And I think Jimmy was owed one. His previous fight against Adolfo Bellato, I thought he was hard done by. I thought he won that fight as well. Beat Marcin Prachnio relatively comfortably. First round submission. Jimmy Groot wins. And then next fight we had the schmodel. Now it's not a schmodel. It's not a model that some people claim to be. Islam Dulatov is genuinely a stud. And I'm saying that with the least amount of diddy that I can. He's a good looking fella. And he is a model. And I read that 2 days from now, from the fight, he has a photo shoot with CQ. And he's gonna do that photo shoot, seeing that basically nothing landed on his face. Finished Adam Fugian, first round, beautiful straight, dropped Adam and then knocked him out, only to knock him back on. I don't even know whether that is applicable. He knocked him out, and then with the follow-up shots, he knocked him back on. He was unconscious and he knocked him into consciousness. So kind of a Brian Ortega, Diego Lopez effect we saw, but basically face unscathed. And now we have a pretty boy within the UFC who is a legit model fighting in the UFC. The times have changed. We are in a new generation of what the fuck is going on. I have zero idea, but Islam Dulatov looked really impressive. And I don't mean aesthetically, I mean his performance looked really impressive in his win over Adam Fugian. But then we moved on to the prelims, the actual prelims, the preliminary card. It started off with Atiba Gautier versus Robert Valentin. Fight starts off, Gautier lands bombs because he is not human, because they experimented on I almost said something. I definitely. They experimented on something that isn't human, and that thing slept with a woman. And Atiba Gautier is the thing that got birthed out of said woman. He is massive, yoked, and he has a lot of power. And he dropped bombs on Robert Valentin. And what was interesting is Valentin tried to play it off as if it didn't hurt him, telling Gautier to come on, where in fact Gautier couldn't have possibly come on more. You know what I'm saying? Because had he done so, Robert would have probably ceased to exist. Because Gauthier at that time landed consecutively, with Robert not throwing anything back, and then proceeded to knock Robert Valentin out. So whenever you are hurt, just a I don't know, a precaution you could take, probably not advise your opponent to pile on the damage. Like seeing the guy from Texas Chainsaw basically ending all of your friends, wearing one's face, standing backed up in a corner and saying, yeah, come on, buddy. Alright. But Thibaut Gauthier, an impressive win for him, knocking out Robert Valentin, and yeah, I think he's gonna be a force within the middleweight division. How good he is and how good he'll become, I don't necessarily know, but from what I've seen, his first two performances inside of the UFC, that's African blood. He is a specimen, and an impressive knockout for Gauthier. Then moving on to the next fight, Francisco Prado taking on Nikolai Veretennikov. Now, with all due respect, I thought money should have been played on Veretennikov. I thought that he would have won, and I saw that he was an underdog, and I thought this is a good bet to make. And then first round happens, and Veretennikov looks really good, and basically wins the first round. And I'm thinking to myself, easy. I have seen bet fight IQ on a mailbox than what Nikolai did in this fight. Because second round starts, he drops Prado, and he tries to finish him. He doesn't get the finish. But at this point, Prado is legitimately hurt, but Nikolai is tired. So what do you do to conserve energy? You throw spinning shit, which Nikolai did. Through spinning he tried a spinning wheel kick, which he tried it standing inside of the pocket. So not at distance where it could possibly land. Being visibly tired, Nikolai tried to throw a spinning wheel kick. What happened? Prado basically just caught his back, latched onto it, took him down. Now, luckily, Nikolai ended up reversing the position, and then on top won the second round. So you would imagine being visibly tired, being exhausted, but knowing you have 2 rounds in the bag, you're probably going to win this. Just dictate range, play it safe, ensure that you don't get taken down. Nikolai Veretennikov proceeds to not once, but twice throw another spinning wheel kick, where he got caught both times once again, where Prado just latched onto his back and took him down. I have never seen something like this in my life. I was basically throwing my TV remote at the wall, thinking, how? Just dictate range and see this through, because obviously Prado is extremely durable. You won't knock him out because you are visibly on your last breath. So just see the round out, take your 2-1, take your 29-28, and win the fight. Because you did knock him down in the second, you did dominate the first, you'll be fine. It was impressive. It was like Nikolai tried to grab defeat out of the jaws of victory. Like he would do everything at his disposal and not take victory for an answer, trying to lose that fight, and he didn't. So I felt vindicated, but I knew I was this close to making a horrible decision, which in hindsight shouldn't have been. It should have been way easier for Nikolai in this fight. He made it as tough as possible. And then we moved on to the next fight, Marvin Vettori versus Brendan Allen. Now, grudge match. So allegedly Marvin and Brendan Allen had a scuffle inside of a casino and wanted to fight one another. And allegedly did fight one another. Now, if I was security, the only person that I would separate whenever I see Marvin Vettori and Brendan Allen, these are guys that are 200 pounds plus. If I see them fighting one another, the only person I will separate from this equation as a security official within the casino would be other people. I would do my best to have no one separate that. Because could you imagine? You are a mere security man with some background, and you have to stop those two from fighting one another, from punching one another, from possibly breaking one another. I would sit in the corner and I would prevent everyone from stopping them. And I would basically just see it play out. And then whoever wins, I would try and tase them. That's the only thing you could do. Now, it was a grudge match. There was, obviously, things were said on both sides, and they visibly disliked one another. Now, this is what a fight should look like, where there is bad blood. Because both men tried to end one another. So for future references, Manel Kaib and Muhammad Mokaev, this is what it should look like. This is what a fight between two men that genuinely dislike one another should look like. It was insane. I think it ended up receiving fight of the night. Now, that's debatable, but it was that good. Because Brendan Allen basically disregarded wrestling and stood for the entire time. Marvin Vettori did the same. Now, obviously, we know that if you want to knock out Marvin Vettori, you probably have to hit him with a bulldozer because his chin is made out of adamantium. And we saw Brendan Allen try. They could legitimately use Marvin's chin as the foundation for a house. And I guarantee you no wolf is blowing that thing down. None. They could use his chin for a new Mount Rushmore and basically just carve out faces on it. That is how hard Marvin's chin is. Now, what I don't understand is obviously Marvin is more of a volume guy. He ended up losing the fight via unanimous decision because he doesn't really throw with a lot of intent, doesn't really throw with a lot of power. It's way more volume than intent, doesn't really stand on his punches. If you have a chin like that, a top 5 ever chin within the UFC, why not rotate more on your punches? Why not throw with more intent, knowing that you could possibly take what your opponent is throwing, but they can't necessarily take everything you're throwing? If I was Marvin's coach, I would basically have him fight like Ilya. Rotate on everything. Throw with everything every single time. Now, sure, you will fade faster, but Marvin has a great gas tank as well. It just doesn't make sense for Marvin to be a volume guy because he is an imposing figure. He is a massive guy. He is bulky. He does have muscle. He doesn't fatigue. Just have him stand on his punches, throw everything with all of the intent. Basically, the way Vinicius Oliveira does. Because in the next fight, we saw technicality being thrown out the window. We saw Vinicius Oliveira basically say nay to any form of a technical strike you will ever see in your life. Constantly moving forward, Kyler Phillips constantly backpedaling, Vinicius doesn't have his hands up, no one exposes this for some odd reason, and he could basically send you a letter that tells you exactly what he is going to throw. That's how much he loads up on his punches. Yet he still caught Kyler Phillips and almost decapitated him. You could see that uppercut from 3 years back, and it still lands. And he doesn't protect himself at all. It doesn't matter because I think he has Marvin's chin as well. I think they might have a long lost relative, the same one, because he doesn't have any regard for his own well-being. With Marvin Vettori and Vinicius Oliveira, the safest place for their head to be while you're throwing a punch is right in front of the trajectory of your punch. That is basically what Vinicius and Marvin is doing. They are blocking your punches with their head. And Vinicius goes on to beat Kyler Phillips. Brendan Allen goes on to beat Marvin Vettori. That's the end of the prelims. And then we move on to the main card. So the main card started inside of lightweight division. Michael Johnson, 39-year-old Michael Johnson versus Daniel Zellhuber. And I saw this, and I saw Michael Johnson as a plus 600 dog. And I pounced. I pounced like I was a puma, and I was stalking prey. Because I knew Michael Johnson was gonna have the speed advantage. Gonna have the experience advantage as well. And does possess knockout power. And Michael Johnson goes on to beat Daniel Zellhuber via unanimous decision and almost knocks him out in the second round. How good is Michael Johnson? He's one of those guys within the UFC where you think if you walked past him in the street and you had beef, you would think, not knowing who he was, you stood a chance. And then before your blink finished, you would meet the father. You would get knocked out so fast that you would basically, your blink won't even finish. That's how quick Michael Johnson is. This is a Michael Johnson who has knocked out Dustin Poirier and then lost to some ungodly names. So if you think Michael Johnson goes on to beat Daniel Zellhuber only to lose to a lightweight from Ryzen who is making his debut inside of the UFC 5 game, then you'd probably be correct. There's nothing more Michael Johnson than beating a young and upcoming, exciting prospect and then losing to someone who has retired 15 years ago. That's the Michael Johnson effect. But I saw him as a plus 600 dog and I thought, I'm taking Michael Johnson. And then, yeah, listen, it went well. It went well at UFC 318. But then moving on to the next fight, Dan Ige versus Patricio Pitbull. And I saw, when I watched the fight, it felt like for the entirety of Pitbull's fight with Yair Rodriguez, as well as the first round, it looked like Patricio Pitbull was gone. It looked like the Pitbull that we've known for a long time. The Bellator Pitbull has been buried. He doesn't exist anymore. There wasn't a fire to it. There wasn't a sense of urgency. And then all of a sudden, halfway through the second round, and it turns on like a light switch. He turns into this figure that we came accustomed to seeing in the Bellator. This imposing, well-rounded, a lot of power featherweight, imposing his will on Dan Ige, dropping Dan Ige, having him hurt, mixing in the wrestling, overwhelming him. And that version of Patricio Pitbull is scary. If he can do that constantly now within the UFC, if he did that to Yair Rodriguez, he would have beaten Yair Rodriguez. But he was so reluctant to push the pace when he fought Yair. And in the first round against Ige, this is the exact same thing. And then all of a sudden it was just like a switch flipped in his head, and he turns into the Pitbull of old and dominates Dan Ige for basically 2 rounds. Wins the fight against Dan Ige, moving on to Kevin Holland versus Daniel Rodriguez. Now there is nothing more Kevin Holland than beating good fighters within the UFC, then being ranked and taking on unranked opponents and losing. There is nothing more Kevin Holland than that. And that's why we love Kevin Holland. Because Kevin would basically fight, if Dana had to phone Kevin Holland and tell him, listen, there's a guy at Walmart that says he can beat your ass, guarantee Kevin Holland would probably rock up there and would say yes to fighting that person. He wants to fight He doesn't care. He'll fight anyone. So he fights Daniel Rodriguez. And he loses. By unanimous decision. Which wasn't a robbery. Daniel Rodriguez won that fight. Won rounds 1 and 2. So Kevin Holland isn't ranked anymore. As soon as you get a slight glimmer of hope regarding Kevin Holland, be prepared. You will be disappointed. And that's fine. Because then you will be excited. He will prove you wrong once again. You will bet on him to beat Daniel Rodriguez. He will lose. And in his next fight, he will accept the fight on short notice and fight Prime Kamaru Usman. And somehow he will win. Only to go on and lose to a retired Tyron Woodley. That's basically Kevin Holland. So, as a Kevin Holland fan, that was diabolical work. That was diabolical work. It sucked. But we move on to the co-main event. Paulo Costa takes on Roman Kopylov, beats Kopylov by unanimous decision. Paulo Costa back on the win column, calls out Khamzat Chimaev. Listen, Dricus versus Khamzat, less than a month away. We'll see what happens. Great to see Paulo back to somewhat the Paulo Costa of old. The guy that has devastating body kicks, devastating kicks in general, constantly moves forward, has a good base. It was good to see Paulo Costa back to that way, back to that form. And I don't think he's entirely there just yet, but this is a great step in the right direction for Paulo Costa. And then moving on to the main event, Max Holloway versus Dustin Poirier. Now, don't really want to dissect the fight. First round, Max knocks down Dustin Poirier. Second round, Max has Dustin hurt, but then Dustin does the old flipperoonie, does the Uno reverse, drops Max, and then third round, fourth round, fifth round, I thought Max won those rounds. I thought Dustin won round 2, I thought Max won the rest. Doesn't matter. It was an insane fight. And honestly, if ever there's a fight that personifies Dustin Poirier, it was this fight. This fight personified Dustin Poirier and his journey within the UFC. A guy who technically isn't the best, who isn't the strongest, doesn't have the best cardio, but a guy that has the will of anyone, who has an iron will and basically just won't rest on his laurels. He'll do everything he can. He looked gone in the second round when Max hurt him once again. His timing looked off, he looked slow, and it looked like Max was gonna steamroll Dustin Poirier. And then Dustin bounces back like he has done for the entirety of his UFC career. It was a beautiful fight. It sucked that Dustin lost, but it was insane Max won. And then we saw Dustin retire. And it's tough. When they showed the montage of his career, someone was cutting onions, very, very close to me, and it sucks. It's someone that we saw and we watched fight for a long time. Someone that you don't necessarily appreciate him for everything he is until he is gone. A guy that the only reason Dustin Poirier wasn't at any point in his career a champion within the UFC is because he fought arguably the 3 best lightweights of all time. Fought Khabib, who is a top 3 lightweight of all time. Fought Charles, who according to me is a top 3 lightweight of all time. Fought Islam Makhachev, who is the best lightweight of all time. That is the only reason why Dustin Poirier is not a UFC champion. A unified, undisputed UFC champion. It's not because of a lack of anything. Now, I did say that technically in all of those things he weren't the best, but he had resilience, he was durable, and he would never give up on himself. He would just constantly move forward, and you had to completely take him out if you wanted to win a fight. We saw that with Charles. We saw that with Islam. We saw that with Khabib. Dustin Poirier is a stalwart. He is an icon within the UFC, and genuinely deserves all the credit that he gets, whether you like him inside or rather whether you like him outside of the octagon or not. It doesn't really matter. It's what he brought to the sport, and what he brought to the sport is action. It is perseverance, it is resilience, it is durability, it is cardio, it is insane boxing. Just a guy who you could gradually see his progression throughout his UFC career, and it's insane. Dustin Poirier is a champion, not within the, obviously for us, he is insane. And yeah, I just hope he enjoys retirement. That's basically my reaction for UFC 318. Let me know in the comment section which fight that you enjoyed the most. I would really appreciate it. Have a beautiful day, and I'll catch you in the next one.